Galakas la Selako, Nugo am Galagame guys and Ako Quequasutin Kuatmis Muskamo, Zaudeno. Galakas la Quangan, a Winagis, Wheatla Megan, Golgopot la Quatnala. My traditional name is Galagame. I'm from the Quequasutinuk and the Quatmis peoples of the Muskamog Zaudeno. I've recognized that we're on the unceded territories of the Lekwungen people and that we're going to Golgopotha, which means we're going to lock arms and we're going to get strength from one another. Maybe I should put this away first. So that song, it's a Yalakwala, and I composed it in the 1900s. Let's be honest. I started singing in the late 1900s, and I didn't quite learn a song correctly. One of my hereditary chiefs, Wachawidi, William Wasden Jr., composed a song, and I almost got it right. And as good luck would have it, the song still made sense, so it was one of my first compositions. But the word Hayalikila, in the Kwakwala language, it's about healing, about driving madness from your mind, about being present in the moment. And when we sing this and our dancers are dancing, they make this motion to show that we're taking that away. And I thought it's a good way to start, because when I want to talk about reconciliation and food security with First Nations people, I hope that Canadians can take away the stereotypes that you may have, or the misinformation that you're bombarded with by media. So Uncle Michael was the one that taught me to sing. And as our time together unrolled, I really do believe that my life of alcoholism and addiction and recovery was simply to prepare me in every possible way to meet Michael Miles Patrick Michelle Van Dyck III. That's how he would often introduce himself. Giant of a man of average size, knew our language, culture, traditions, history, played a beautiful 12-string guitar. And he also was a nurse for over 30 years. And one of the things that he taught me, like as we delved into our culture, we needed to understand origin stories of different nations, of different families, so we could learn those songs to help them in the cultural way. And Uncle Mike always said to me, well, a couple things. We La Megas Numbagwanama, we're one people. But he also said, not one origin story was more important than the other. And knowing Uncle Mike as I did, he was talking about all of us, about the equality of all the races on the planet, regardless of faith or religion or cultural practice. And he had a very significant impact on my life in a very, very, very positive way. This is my late uncle. This is what we call glubuk. It's barbecued salmon. Has anyone ever caught a salmon? Can we bring the lights up for a sec? Keep your hands up. Has anybody ever eaten a salmon? Nice. I knew I wasn't the only fish eater in the room here today. But it's not a menu choice for our people. It's who we are. It ties us to our lands. It ties us to our waters, our culture, our traditions, our values. And it is something that is in trouble today in BC. And we need to take a real hard look at that. How can we make things better, right, for all of us? This is perhaps the last picture that I ever looked cute in. Yeah, so long ago. My first experience fishing was as a little boy in Guayastumps on Guilford Island. My uncle took us out fishing, and like every 6, 7-year-old, absolutely ecstatic and happy about catching a fish and then catching another one. But I found the magic happened is when I returned home to our village, because we shared the catch with our family. I brought fish to my granny. And that was, looking back, I wish I could say I realized it at 6, but I didn't. my first venture into helping my family and our community and our nation. And then later in life, you see how valuable that other picture was. So I became a commercial fisherman for 12 years, and I was introduced to food fishing. And so when the fish are running through the Johnstone Straits, particularly sockeye, and of course then again when the chums are going, but virtually every First Nation boat would go out food fishing. We bring home fish for our family. And of course for me that meant bringing fish to Auntie Mabel's house. She had the biggest backyard. And I was able to work on fish with Auntie Mabel, Granny Annie, she was a gem, and my mom. And for days, we would enjoy each other's company, we'd work on fish, we'd barbecue, we'd smoke, we'd jar. And our unit, our family tie strengthened. And we were doing what all our people have done since the beginning of time. But also everyone else in Campbell River where we lived, and Alert Bay, and Haida Gwaii, and Bella Bella. And so I learned that this was something that really drew First Nations together as our culture traditions. This is province-wide. 90% of First Nations in British Columbia rely upon wild salmon, not as a menu choice, but as who we are. And when you think about it in terms of Canada, 90% of the First Nations in BC is almost 1/3 of all First Nations across Canada. So it's that level of importance. And I think we, and I mean the societal we, have to come together and insist on looking after wild salmon for a whole host of reasons. One being reconciliation with the Crown, food security. But in the work that I've done with the Wild Salmon Alliance, in particular on fish farms, we've united commercial fishermen, sport fishermen, wilderness tourism operators, and First Nations. So we can find unity in doing something together. Now, we negotiated the Broughton Fish Farm LOU, got rid of 18 fish farms over 4 years. Yep. And it was the first time in Canada's history the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People was implemented. It was really exciting. We brought in our traditional ecological knowledge into the discussions. We understood that certain rivers like Haida and Kakweekin, which you might know as Bond Sound and Thompson Sound, were down to just a couple hundred fish returning. So we removed the most vital farms that were too close and too bad. And now I'm super proud and happy to tell you all, these river systems have been getting tens of thousands back now. And we were able to benefit the environment, benefit First Nations, benefit the local economy. So it's something that I believe that we can pursue together, which would be incredibly meaningful on so many different ways. Now, I've mentioned about culture and traditions. Canada issued an apology for the residential schools. And as a result of that, they established a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And they heard testimony from thousands of Indian residential school survivors over a 6-year period. And they came up with a series of reports. And the one about traditions and culture, a common theme throughout the testimony, is you can't have reconciliation without reconciling with Mother Earth, with the environment. You can't have reconciliation without appropriate efforts to rebuild culture and traditions and attachments to lands. Because those were the goals of the residential school, right? Absorb us into the body politic, kill our language, traditions, and culture. Oh, and remove us from our lands. Canada may not like us, but they sure like our land. And then especially those resources, that's something special. But we have to understand the Crown doesn't know, really, what they're going to do for reconciliation. They don't know the substantive steps they're going to take. So how can you, as Canadian citizens, know? And I've learned, and maybe you'll share this with me, when you don't know something, often fear can creep in. And then once fear has firmly established itself in your thinking, you become paralyzed and you don't make any decisions. And yet when we talk about reconciliation in Canada with First Nations, we're talking about human rights in Canada, continually being denied today. So I want to see us find that way we can all Galgaposa, lock arms, and move forward on salmon. Because I believe reconciliation is like the removal of colonial instruments of governance, of law, of policy that don't fully recognize Indigenous peoples' place in this country. And we can do that because the Constitution has it in there, and the Supreme Court has given quite a few direction for that. But it's going to take all of us to accomplish that. So in closing, this is our Gukes here, big house in Guilford Island, Guayasans. I want to sing the second verse of that song I composed. Do you remember when I started singing? Late 1900s, that's right. So we moved from Hailikila, taking the madness away, and I replaced that word with Hyachia. And when our dancers dance, they make this motion. And it's about sharing that spiritual gift to those that are with you. And that's what I'm hoping for in this whole concept of ideas we're sharing, about taking this little conversation, a little one-sided at this point, and letting it ripple out, because food security, keystone species, occur around the world. And so we could look at what Indigenous people need globally. And I want to continue that dream, because it's kind of too painful not to. I still began singing in the late 1900s, and I still believe in justice in Canada, and we can accomplish that through wild salmon. Hyachia kila, hyachia kila, ye dus lanugwa, na wala kwe, hai wo. We can achieve reconciliation through salmon, and everyone benefits. How does that sound?